Hey again, everybody. Next drill on the list. We're moving through all the Twerhau, like we do in our warm-ups. We started with Vinden and winding, and then we moved on to our Oberhau that delivers the point, aka Zornhau. We did our Twerhau wind, the Twerhau against the flat, winding to take the center line. The next cut is Twerhau. We often do this at the end of our drills because whatever, it's easier because it doesn't actually walk across the floor. But in these videos, I'm just going to do it in the Meisterhau, or the manual order. Okay, so this one we're actually going to talk a little more about form. I think that delivering the Twerhau in a drill, especially a drill you're not going up against the Pell, it's really important to learn how to do it well. I think it really is going to improve your fighting. And it can be done safely, but if you don't learn the form, over time you can fuck up your wrists. When you're just doing these over and over and over again, especially if you're trying to do them fast and strong and you're getting tired and your form starts falling, you can kind of overextend and tweak your wrist, lead to chronic injury. And we don't want that. So I'm going to talk about the form of how to throw Twerhau without a target in place to stop you. So one way, if you just want to spam a shitload of Twerhaus, if you have a Pell at home, I don't have a Pell right here with me. I'm going to show you on the tree. If you do have a tree, I recommend not doing this. It's bad for the tree. It's also not great for your sword. Anything that's really heavy and massive and rooted to the ground that doesn't move or doesn't have padding will break your sword. So yeah, just be careful for that. But if you're just spamming Twerhaus, you can really just wail as hard as you can, and normally the Pell or the target you're cutting against will stop it, right? So that puts it in a place where you don't have to, you're generating all this force and you don't have to absorb any of it. It doesn't have to go anywhere in your body, right? It doesn't need to go into your joints, doesn't need to go into your arms, your torso, right? All the force you're generating is being transmitted into that tree, and you don't have to worry about your form as much. So that makes it nice to work on Pells. Also, Pells are great because they help make you use, there's vibration when you hit, which works on the grip more. There can be a much better workout. So Pells are cool, but this is how to throw Twerhaus, assuming that you don't have a Pell to stop your motion. All right, so we're gonna start in our upper right ox, and we're going to throw the Twerhau across. A few things. One, we're starting over our right shoulder. As we throw the Twerhau, we're going to turn. We want it to end over our left shoulder, right? We don't want to be throwing it in front of our face like this, right? This is not a good cut. It doesn't defend you very well. It doesn't actually deliver a lot of force. It's a shitty cut. But beyond that, it's also worse for your wrist. So the big enemy on doing these Twerhau, especially over and over again when you don't have anything to stop it, is your wrists extending and breaking. Let me get close to the camera so you can see. So as I throw this cut, this is not good, right? You see the way that this wrist is bent here? This is not what I want. So when it's over your head, it really leads to these wrists turning and tweaking. When what we want is to be in a strong position here, as if we were in an ox, right? So you see here, this wrist is not broken. This wrist is not broken. They're both straight on like this, okay? So that form is really important. So I'll just sit here. I'll do it on my knees. That's easier. So I'm here like this. It's Twerhau across, right? So where's the force going? I said normally if you have a Pell, you're transmitting into the Pell. Where is it going if you don't have a Pell? So we're here in our cross position, our crossed ox position. We cut across. We're generating a lot of force here, right? And if you don't know what you're doing, what will happen is the way this is going to stop is it's just going to go into the wrist. So it's turning this wrist like this. It's cranking this wrist over in a way that it doesn't like to be cranked. My shoulder's getting sore. I've been sitting around a lot recently. We're cutting here. We're transmitting a lot of we're torquing this wrist, and we are also breaking this wrist, right? So we're putting this wrist in this position. So we're bending this wrist like this, and we're turning this wrist, right? And so all that force, even one, you can feel it. It's not great for your joints, right? But especially if you're doing like 50 or 100 of these in a row, it's going to murder these wrists over time, especially if you're like a younger person and you're like, oh, it doesn't matter so much. But if you train yourself to do it this way and you keep on practicing that way for 5 or 10 years, believe me, it will come back and hurt you. It's also just structurally not as sound. So it's good to learn the right way to do it. All right, anyway, so what we want to do, instead of just letting the joints absorb it, let it swing out as far as it wants to go until our joints passively absorb it. So we want to take that force and redirect it back, right? So we're generating force, it's swinging around quickly. What we want to do is now get control of it, and with this backhand, pull it back, right? Like this. And so where the force goes now is it's going back into this shoulder in this like open shoulder position, right? And because I'm letting my shoulder turn and open with it, like this, right? That's a really good place to put all that force. Does that kind of make sense? So we're here, we're going like that. Okay? So wrists aren't broken. This wrist is turned a little bit, but it's not absorbing any of that force. The force is coming back. Okay, does that make sense? So in class, or I think online I saw Paul mention this a few weeks ago, when we talk about pulling your pommel back, that's what we mean. So we don't want this, we want this, right? Okay, that's what we're looking for. All right. So let's talk about, now that we know how to do it safely, and I should also say this side is much less dangerous because here our arms are crossing, right? Our forearms are crossing. So a lot of the force gets, boom, slammed together here, right? And that's a much better place to put it. You can also bring that shoulder back and you pull some of the force back there, and so some of it can get absorbed back here. But a lot of it goes the impact between your forearms, right? And as long as you don't really like drive it in there and keep muscling after that contact has been made, that's not going to get out to your wrists. It's not going to break those wrists. Though it's still important, just like on the left side, it's starting to hurt my knees. On the left side, we want to make sure we're pulling that shoulder back so that it's not chicken winging out like this, right? We want to make sure we're pulling back into a good position here, like that, right? On this side, we do want to make sure our arms are meeting like this, as opposed to like this. So I don't think, most of us don't do this. I think we programmed it out of just about everybody in the school, but sometimes you'll see this, right? For your right ox or for your crossed arm ox. This is what we want to see. This is how you hold an ox on this side, right? So when you cut, it comes here. It doesn't come here, which is, now you're again going to have the wrist problem, and also for the shoulder to get that high, you're putting it in a weird position. I don't know, it feels dislocating. I wouldn't advise it. Okay. So blah, blah, blah. That's the form. Don't fuck your wrists up. If you have any questions about this, please write me online about it or make a video yourself. And I can make a video again kind of correcting things or talking any more about these little points. Again, it's really bad for your wrist to do it wrong, but also if you can confidently control your Twerhaus, you're in a situation where when you're fencing and you throw one across, if it whiffs, you're not here, right? I've seen this a lot in sparring, especially at tournaments where people are going really hard and they're from different backgrounds than we are. I'll see people throw a big ass Twerhau, and then when it misses, they're just fucked because they're so used to something being there to stop it. Either repel, or they have a sparring tradition in their club where people always meet blows with blows. So you want to be in a place where all of your motions, all your moves are self-contained, right? So if you're throwing this big Twerhau across, it can stop on a dime and either defend or cut or thrust, deliver thrusts in, okay? And you're not going to be able to do that if every time you throw a Twerhau, you're either like letting it shoot all the way across because you're waiting for your joints to passively absorb it, or because you're hoping a target will absorb it. All right, anyways, I'll stop soliloquizing about that. So the actual drill, this is one that we lifted from Martin Fabian. I like it a lot. I think it has a good motion that encourages throwing Twerhaus where you can still control your point. You can keep your point under control. It also, you focus on this big wind around, which is a good way to generate force with your Twerhaus, right? So if I'm actually fighting someone, and let's say we're here and we're bound up, to actually push into that sword and wind up before you come around with a Twer is actually a pretty good habit to have, tactically speaking. All right, so the drill is we're up on our right side. We are point, center line, threatening the chest or the face of our opponent. We are going to cut across. We are going to drop down, circle around. So I'm trying to throw a Twer through the head, get control of the point, bring that point back to center line, and then in a nice smooth action, wind down through both flugs and back up again. Make sure you've wound all the way up before you throw the Twer out of the other side. Make sure you're starting on top of one shoulder, you're cutting through to the other shoulder. Make sure that back elbow is going back, not out to the side, but back. And again, it's a really nice time to work on point control. Try to have that point stay in one space as the sword moves around it, okay? All right, so normally in class, what do we do? 10 or 20 from one side, then 10 or 20 from the other. So now you go to, if you're right hand, your left side, ox, here, you cut Twerhau across, yeah, that's it. Hopefully the form's okay. It'd be really funny if I talked for 10 minutes about how the form's so important and I just fuck it up as soon as I start doing the drill. We'll see, I'll check the video. All right, so those are the first two. And then in class, as I'm sure you remember, we do doubles. So Twerhaus are often chained, right? They're frequently not done with just one and done. You often will chain them together. So we'll start on the right and do a right, left. Again, we're cutting all the way through, pulling this elbow back to get it under control and cutting all the way back. And then we rotate down and through, and then all right. Try to think about good, not just good form, keeping the cut under control, but think about good power generation, edge alignment, all that stuff. That's pretty much the drill. Let's see, versions of this. Throwing in thrusts after the Twer can be fun. So you can Twer across, thrust out, and then bring it back in. You can also just Twer across, thrust out, wind back across. This is one I'll do sometimes too. I like that one. And when you do that, I should say, you're here, you've cut across, you've extended out. Try and have a nice tight wind around there to bring it back. So we're here, we thrust out, and now still watching that point control. That's one variation I'll do at home a lot. You can throw the Twer high and low. So often a better way to throw a Twer than right at the ear is at the arm or the hip or the rib. You can see how those work, I think, pretty much immediately. So Twering to high or low targets. Another big one is, again, our default in the club is always to do techniques, winding techniques, sword work close, right? So on these Twerhaus, I am keeping it pretty tight, right? I'm here, throwing it across and coming around. Now when we're fencing, we often do not want to throw a Twerhaus that tight. Often we want them to reach out. So we can also do this drill reaching out, bringing in, reaching out, right? For this long reaching Twer. So how do we get that one under control? Because normally we keep it tight and close, and we pull back our shoulder to get it. Here we bring it up, and as we reach out, we're still kind of like exerting control with the left hand. So you throw it, and then your left hand kind of seizes it, but you're not pulling it back. You're just kind of increasing the grip. You want to make sure you have that good form. And a lot of times when I do this, when you reach out, you should still be able to do it with this totally passive stance. Some of that force is delivered into your palm like this, right? So it's like this, and it stops like that, okay? Just make sure you're not breaking that wrist, you're not torquing it over much. I think I have a neighbor saying hello. Hello, Amelia. She's not out here right now. I'm doing a little class online, okay? Y'all are okay. You can make as much noise as you want. So, yeah, where was I? Yeah, so try and get some extension. Try and play with extension. Stopping here again. I'm not letting these wrists torque across, right? I'm not letting that wrist break. I'm reaching out. I'm halting the motion with my left hand. Right? We can do this with a step. Right? That's a good one to do too. Yeah, so think about that. Those are all versions of the drill. You can run, play with extension, but always, always, always keep that Twer under control. Make sure you're not generating all this force that's controlling you. Make sure that Twer is always on a leash, right? You always have control over it. Think about not breaking those wrists. Think about transferring that force back into your shoulders as opposed to kind of across in these broken wrists. All right, that's it for that drill, guys. Thanks. Please feel free to send any questions, of course. And yeah, stay safe, stay sane. Bye.